Warning, this video shows pictures taken after eye removal surgery. This is my second video showing pictures of me having the eye removed and radiation therapy. My voice is having a bad day today, so I'm sorry, but I have tried to talk as best as I can throughout the video. 5 minutes before I went down for the surgery, I took this photo with the classic arrow over my eye. And I took this photo to prove what the eye looked like before I had the operation. And I do have every faith that it would have gone back into place given some time. This is me after the operation and my eye had been removed. I didn't realise that the rest of my face would swell up so much and my nose hurt. I took this video because I couldn't feel anything on my face. I couldn't feel when I moved my eye or my nose or moved my lips. I couldn't even feel my tongue. The only thing, funnily enough, that I could feel was my eye that had been removed. I actually started to think maybe the doctors hadn't taken my eye away because I could feel it blinking and moving around. But unfortunately, this was my first experience of phantom pain. Even to this day, I still get phantom pain. Sometimes I'll feel a bit of sleep in the corner of my eye and go to get it out. For anybody that is going through this, I just want to say the phantom pain isn't actually painful. I never get any pain. I never get any headaches or anything like that. It's just like a little itch on my eyelash or a bit of sleep in my eye, but it's not painful and it doesn't last very long. I get asked this quite a lot and it is not painful, so it's not something to worry about too much. Now you might be thinking, what on earth is that up your nose? And originally the cancer was sat on a bone between your nose and your eye socket. And because it was sat on it, that was removed. Therefore, I could breathe through my eye socket. So that side of my nostril had to be packed shut because the eye socket needed to be completely airtight while the skin was recovering and while my eyelids were fusing together to make a new eye skin. That new eye skin would then go and line the socket. And in order for it to be strong enough to do that, it needed to be completely airtight. That's why I had the nose packed. As you can see here, a few days after surgery, I went home and a lot of my feeling and movement had come back into my face. They got a call from the doctor to ask me to come back in so he could have a look at my eye. This would be how I looked forever. Little did I know that the skin would fail, but at that point, this was how I would be forever now. My eyelashes had been cut off and the skin was then sewn shut together to make the new skin, which would eventually line my socket. They cleaned the skin and checked for any signs of infection, then put the big cone back on. And here's me a few days later when they asked me to come in because they thought there was something wrong with my nose and there was too much air going through it, which was stopping the skin fusing together. It's safe to say I wasn't smiling after they put this up my nose. It was like a tampon with a plastic straw in the middle of it. And this was probably the most horrendous, worst part of having the eye removed. This was painful. And they just stuffed it up my nose. I'm surprised it even fit. It felt that big. And I had to wear it for about 2 weeks. And it was awful. It made my head feel like it was exploding. It really was awful, and it never felt any better. It always felt like when it was first put in. Thankfully, it was only temporary, so after 2 weeks they had to take it out. And I didn't argue with that, but over the next few days as I went home, I noticed that there was air coming out of one spot on the scar, so they wanted to put another one back up my nose, but instead I had this. And it was like an antiseptic cream wrapped in a bandage, stuffed up my nose. If that didn't work, I would need one of the tampons back up my nose, but thankfully this was only in for 4 days and then it was removed. And I was told I could start taking the bandage off the top of my eye to give the skin a bit of air to breathe. A few days later, I had the stitches out and I noticed such a big improvement. The skin underneath actually looked quite good and a lot better than I thought it would look. I was actually quite surprised just how much anxiety the not knowing what it would look like had caused. But once I saw it and it started to heal, I thought, you know what, I could actually live with that. And that's what I did. And 5 weeks after my eye removal surgery, we went to Kent to see some friends that we have down there. And I'm so happy to say that while I was down there, I completed another one of my bucket list dreams, and that was to see the White Cliffs of Dover. I'd always wanted to see them, and 5 weeks after having my eye removed, I was in the middle of the ocean, on a dinghy, seeing the White Cliffs of Dover. I didn't have to keep the eye covered up anymore, but for this trip, because I was on the sea and there was salt water and things, I did cover it up and I made sure it was watertight and airtight. There was nothing getting in there and there was nothing getting in the way of me experiencing the White Cliffs of Dover. Now remember, this is 5 weeks after I had my eye removed. It really isn't that bad, and the recovery from it, apart from having the tampon up my nose, was quite pain-free. I didn't have headaches or migraines. It was quite a simple operation that I'd spent too much time worrying about. And then I started to see things in a new light, and I instantly saw things and thought, oh, I could make an eye patch of that. And that's exactly what I did with one of my daughter's headbands. And then came the radiation. So I got a letter for the radiation, but before we could start it, I had to go in and have the mask made. Now, they made this by putting one plastic over my face and then held it down with the clips it would be on the actual radiation tables. So then, once it was secured, they made sure that all the plastic was moulded exactly to my nose and my eye socket to make sure that when you're in radiation, it doesn't move and your body doesn't move, because a lot of the radiation is targeted at a specific body part and they want to make sure that you're always in the same position. For me, it was my head, but there was other people that had half the body cast in this plastic to make sure it stays still. So like if they were having radiation for breast cancer or anywhere on their torso, they'd usually have a longer mask covering half of their body. As they cooled down the plastic, the radiation mask was made. I was due to start a 6-week radiation course where I'd have it Monday to Friday and then the weekends off. 7 weeks after my operation, I went back to work. They gave me a bunch of roses and I couldn't resist putting one in my eye socket. This is actually what inspired me to start making my own eye patches. I got the results of my latest MRI scan and I'm glad to say it was NED, which means no evidence of disease, meaning they couldn't see any signs of cancer. So this video shows you how my eye socket was linked to my nose. So every time I breathed in, the skin went in. And every time I breathed out, it went out again. After about 2 months, this stopped and the skin completely lined the socket and I had no more issues with it until a hole started to open up in the skin, which I could breathe through. I've actually got a video of me blowing out candles and blowing bubbles from my eye socket. I actually found these plasters and they were great because I could match my makeup with it and I could use it for work, and it was like out of sight, out of mind. People didn't want to ask me about it as much. And a lot of people reacted like I just had a normal eye underneath the plaster. And then the time came for me to start my 6 weeks of radiation. And this was me on the first day. Then eyebrow. It was actually the radiation that had killed my eyebrow because it kills the hair follicles. And whereas some of my hair grew back, my eyebrow didn't. But as you can see from the pictures, my eyebrows went in line anyway, because as the skin lines the socket, it kind of drags the rest of the skin in with it. And so my eyebrow actually ended up a little bit in my eye socket. As more and more of the days went on during radiation, I started to go red. And even though it was aimed at my eye socket, my chest also started to go red. And over time, you'll be able to see from the pictures how red my eye socket went. The worst thing about radiation for me was that I had to cancel my holiday that I had booked with my children to Disney World. I swear every time I looked in the sky for the next 6 weeks, all I saw was planes. As time went on, I noticed my skin got redder and redder, and I did read a lot of things online about different creams and things to try. But I would say while you're having radiation, just take the creams that the doctors prescribe you, because a lot of things now has lots of different ingredients in, and that's okay, but because you're having radiation, your skin will get extremely burnt, and it also means it's susceptible to infections. Now, some of the creams have different ingredients in that can be not as good for your skin, especially when you're having radiation. So to stop that, until the redness starts to go down, just use the cream that the doctor recommends. I didn't realise just how much the skin would need the cream, and it needs it all the time. So like I showed you earlier where I wore the plaster, I couldn't do that anymore because I had that much grease from the cream, and I didn't realise it needed to be applied quite often, and you can't quite do that when you have a plaster on, because once you take it off, that's it. It's no longer as sticky. So that's something to bear in mind. There are loads of hints and tips and tricks that you can try out for your specific kind of cancer and where the radiation is aimed for your body. So I would definitely check some of them out. The weeks went on, radiation killed my hair. It didn't kill all of it, it only killed a little bit behind my ear, which with the rest of my hair down, you couldn't really notice. And yes, it has grown back, but it's so thin and it's uncontrollable. It's like I'll straighten it and within seconds, it goes back to being frizzy again. Or I'll curl it and instantly the curl drops out of it and it just won't curl. I have thought about dyeing it a different colour, but there's a scar behind it which is now attached to my new vein, so I don't really want to upset anything there. So for now I'll just have to make do and hide it and tuck it behind my ear or tuck it in my ponytail. That's the end of my radiation, and next I'm going to talk about my fulminant MS attack and the tracheostomy, which will explain why my voice is so slow sometimes. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.